Imagine a fortress, ancient stone walls reaching for the sky, standing as a testament to medieval power and protection. You see the towering gates, the drawbridge, the very entrance beckoning you inside, seemingly straightforward. But what if I told you that the most formidable defenses, the true genius of medieval engineering, were often hidden in plain sight, masquerading as something else entirely? Think of a medieval castle not just as a collection of walls and towers, but as a living, breathing entity with its own poker face, a carefully constructed facade designed to reveal absolutely nothing, to deceive, and ultimately to destroy any who dared to challenge it. These silent sentinels, these gatehouses that weren't what they seemed, represent a pinnacle of medieval architectural deception, a brilliant display of strategic foresight that still boggles the mind centuries later. They stand as powerful reminders of an age when every block of stone, every strategic angle, was a calculated move in a deadly game of chess, designed to protect lords and lands at all costs. How far would you go, how elaborate would your deceptions be to ensure the absolute safety of your kingdom, your family, and your people? Medieval engineers, faced with constant threats and the relentless evolution of siege warfare, pushed the boundaries of innovation in ways we are still uncovering today. They weren't content with simple walls and moats. They sought to weaponize confusion, to turn the very act of approaching a castle into a perilous gauntlet. They crafted structures that invited attack, only to reveal them as intricate, inescapable traps. These were not just gatehouses, they were psychological weapons, designed to break an enemy's spirit long before they ever reached a true entrance. The sheer ingenuity involved in designing a structure that appeared to be an entry point, yet was never truly meant for easy passage, is a concept ripe with historical intrigue and engineering marvel, pulling us into a world where architectural brilliance met battlefield brutality. In this video, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey to uncover 25 such hidden defenses, these incredible disguised gatehouses that were never meant to open. We'll delve into the fascinating paradox of structures built with immense effort and resources, yet intentionally designed to repel, to deter, or to ensnare rather than to welcome. Each example will peel back another layer of medieval cunning, revealing the secrets of designers who understood that sometimes the best defense is a devastating offense disguised as an open invitation. Get ready to have your perceptions of medieval castles completely reshaped as we explore these masterworks of deception, understanding how they guarded their secrets with stone and strategy, proving that in the age of castles, appearances could be deadly deceiving. Our journey begins by tracing the evolution of these monumental structures, understanding how the humble castle gatehouse transformed from a mere entry point into a sophisticated, often deceptive, defensive weapon. In the earliest days of medieval fortifications, a gatehouse was usually just that, a gate set into a wall, perhaps with a simple wooden door and a few guards. These initial designs, however, were notoriously vulnerable. Imagine trying to defend a large, open archway against a determined enemy with battering rams and scaling ladders. It was a weak link, a gaping maw in the castle's otherwise formidable defenses, making it an obvious target for any attacking force and often the first point of breach. There simply wasn't enough structural integrity or defensive capability to withstand a prolonged assault, leaving garrisons scrambling to reinforce a fundamental flaw in their design. Yet, as siege warfare grew more cunning, so too did the architects' responses. The vulnerability of these early gatehouses spurred incredible innovation, leading to the gradual integration of more sophisticated defensive features. We start to see the introduction of heavy wooden doors, often reinforced with iron, backed by sturdy crossbars. Then came the ingenious portcullis, a massive, vertically sliding grate of wood and iron that could be dropped quickly to seal off an entrance, trapping attackers or providing a temporary barrier. This was a game-changer, offering a rapid, robust defense that could be operated from above, keeping defenders out of harm's way. Above these doors, small openings began to appear, precursors to what we now know as murder holes, allowing defenders to drop missiles, boiling water, or even quicklime onto attackers below, a truly unpleasant surprise for anyone attempting a forced entry. These additions weren't merely about adding layers, they were about creating a strategic bottleneck, turning the approach to the gate into a perilous choke point. The ever-increasing sophistication of siege engines, from powerful trebuchets flinging massive projectiles to siege towers allowing direct assault on battlements, demanded an equally advanced defensive strategy. This arms race between offense and defense pushed medieval engineers to design gatehouses that were no longer just about guarding an entrance, but about creating an elaborate kill zone, a place where attackers would be funneled, trapped, and systematically eliminated. It was this necessity, this constant pressure to outwit ever-improving siege tactics, that directly led to the innovative and often deceptive gatehouse designs we're about to explore. They became less about welcoming friends and more about repelling foes, setting the stage for their deliberately disguised nature, where appearance became a critical element of their deadly function. Now, to truly grasp the genius behind these disguised gatehouses, we need to step inside the mind of a medieval attacker. Imagine being part of a besieging army, cold, tired, and desperate to break through a castle's defenses. What would you concentrate on? Naturally, the gatehouse. It was the most obvious point of entry, the path of least resistance, or so it seemed. Commanders would dedicate significant resources, men, and siege engines to breaching this gateway, expecting a straightforward, if brutal, assault. They anticipated a clear target, a definitive weak point to exploit. This expectation, this ingrained assumption about the nature of a castle's entrance, became a powerful weapon in the hands of clever defenders. Medieval defenders weren't just master builders, they were also cunning psychologists. They understood that warfare was as much about breaking the enemy's will as it was about breaking their walls. By deliberately subverting these deeply held expectations, they could sow immense surprise, confusion, and even terror among the besiegers. Think about it. An army spends days, weeks, perhaps even months, building siege towers, preparing battering rams, and maneuvering trebuchets, all focused on that one perceived vulnerable spot. When they finally commit to the assault, only to discover the gatehouse is a dead end, a trap, or simply not what it seems, the psychological blow would be devastating. This element of surprise wasn't just a fleeting moment. It could fundamentally alter the course of a siege, turning an anticipated easy victory into a demoralizing, costly failure. Morale, after all, was a fragile thing during a protracted siege. Soldiers were often far from home, facing disease, starvation, and constant danger. A well-placed show of defiance, a successful ambush, or an unexpected defensive trick could completely shatter an army's fighting spirit. An attacker's confidence, built on reconnaissance and planning, would crumble when confronted with an architectural feature that defied all logic and expectation. Imagine the rumors spreading through the ranks. This castle is cursed, or their engineers are sorcerers. Such unexpected architectural features, designed to mislead and trap, didn't just inflict casualties, they inflicted psychological wounds that could be more effective than any catapult. They transformed what seemed like a conventional military objective into an unsolvable puzzle, fostering a sense of hopelessness that could lead besiegers to abandon their efforts entirely. This deeply ingrained understanding of the human element in warfare laid the crucial groundwork for the ingenious deceptions we are about to uncover, where walls and gates became instruments of mind games as much as physical barriers. This brings us to a fascinating concept: architectural camouflage, a strategy that extended far beyond just the gatehouse and truly defined medieval fortifications. Castles were not merely massive stone structures dropped onto a landscape. They were often designed with an almost organic connection to their surroundings, intended to blend in or even manipulate perception from a distance. Think of a castle built into the side of a cliff, its walls mirroring the natural rock, making it almost invisible until you were right upon it. Or consider how the irregular shapes of a natural hill might have been incorporated into a castle's defenses, making it difficult for an approaching army to discern where the natural terrain ended and the man-made fortifications began. This wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate choice to make the castle appear less imposing, less vulnerable, or simply less obvious than it truly was. The goal was to create a sense of ambiguity, forcing attackers to spend precious time and resources on reconnaissance, delaying their assault, and creating opportunities for the defenders to prepare or launch counterattacks. This philosophy of deception extended to the overall appearance of the castle. Sometimes the design aimed to present a misleading image, making the fortress seem smaller, less defended, or even entirely uninhabited when viewed from a distance. A tower might rise prominently but conceal a cleverly disguised gate at its base, or a seemingly innocuous wall could hide a crucial sally port. This wasn't about invisibility in the modern sense, it was about managing perceptions. Just as a predator might use the shadows to stalk its prey, medieval engineers used light, shadow, and the natural contours of the land to their advantage, making their fortifications an integral part of the environment rather than an alien imposition. This careful integration blurred the lines between nature and architecture, creating a defensive system that was as much an illusion as it was a physical barrier. It was this mastery of visual deception and environmental manipulation that directly informed the design of our disguised gatehouses. If the entire castle could be made to appear harmless or non-existent, then imagine the strategic power of a gatehouse that played the same trick. These weren't just fortified entrances, they were carefully crafted performances designed to look like anything but a critical entry point. Some might have been designed to look like simple farmhouses, others like ruins, and still others might have been so intricately hidden within the overall structure that an attacker wouldn't even realize a gate existed until it was too late. This sophisticated approach to visual trickery was an extension of the psychological warfare we just discussed. It presented a puzzle to the attacker, shifting their focus, forcing them to doubt their assumptions, and ultimately making them waste precious time and effort. This deep understanding of architectural camouflage is crucial for us to truly appreciate the ingenious hidden entrances we are about to explore, each one a testament to the medieval mind's ability to turn stone and mortar into a weapon of cunning deception. Building on this principle of architectural camouflage, medieval engineers took deception to the next level by creating false entrances and blind walls, the ultimate diversions in a siege. Imagine an attacking army having marched for days, finally reaching the imposing walls of a castle. Their military intelligence, gleaned from scouts and spies, points to a seemingly obvious main gate, perhaps grander than the others or strategically placed. They commit their forces, their siege engines, and their morale to breaching this one point, only to discover too late that it leads nowhere, or worse, it leads directly into a meticulously planned death trap. This wasn't merely about confusing the enemy, it was about outright misleading them, drawing them into a meticulously choreographed dance of death where every step was anticipated and every escape route sealed. Historical accounts and archaeological discoveries provide compelling evidence of these ingenious deceptions. Consider the ruins of certain medieval fortresses where what appears to be a robust gatehouse, complete with the remnants of portcullis, grooves and meurtrières, turns out to be nothing more than a solid wall a few feet behind the impressive facade. Or perhaps a gate that, once breached, opens not into the inner bailey but into a small, enclosed courtyard with no further passage, surrounded by elevated firing positions. Attackers pouring through such an opening would find themselves in a death trap, exposed to a hail of arrows and stones from all sides, with no way to advance or retreat. The strategic advantage gained from such a maneuver was immense. It wasted the attackers' precious time and resources, sapped their morale, and most importantly, funneled them into vulnerable positions where the defenders could inflict maximum casualties with minimal risk to themselves. This was psychological warfare in stone and mortar, a testament to the medieval mind's capacity for strategic foresight. The sheer effort involved in constructing something designed never to be used as an entry is truly remarkable. Building a functional gatehouse with all its complex mechanisms was already a monumental task, but to expend similar resources, skilled labor, and precious materials on a structure intended purely as a decoy, a grand illusion, speaks volumes about the value placed on deception in medieval warfare. It demonstrates an understanding that the battle was not just fought with swords and arrows, but with wits and wiles. Every stone laid in these false entrances was a calculated risk, a gamble that the enemy would fall for the ruse. The construction might have even involved making it appear slightly worn or easily attackable to further draw the enemy in, creating an irresistible false sense of security. This level of dedication to misleading the enemy highlights the medieval commanders' mastery of foresight and their willingness to invest in intricate defensive strategies. It's a powerful reminder that medieval castles were not just passive defensive structures, they were active participants in the brutal chess game of siege warfare, constantly manipulating the board to their advantage. Beyond mere diversion, many of these disguised gatehouses were meticulously engineered to function not as entrances, but as sophisticated, deadly traps. Imagine an advancing army having successfully breached what they thought was a vulnerable entry point, only to find themselves pouring into a confined inner courtyard. This wasn't a courtyard designed for welcoming guests. It was a strategically crafted death zone. The walls surrounding this seemingly open space would be riddled with arrow slits and murder holes, perfectly positioned to provide an unrelenting crossfire from multiple angles. Defenders, safe behind thick stone and narrow openings, could rain down arrows, javelins, and even boiling pitch onto the packed attackers below. There would be no cover, no escape, and every step taken by the invaders would only lead them deeper into the kill zone. These traps often featured dead ends or circuitous passages, intentionally designed to disorient and ensnare. An attacker might fight their way through a seemingly breached gate, navigate a short passage, and then come face to face with an impenetrable solid wall, realizing their fatal mistake. Behind them, the gate they had just passed through might be quickly blocked by a falling portcullis or a heavy timber beam, sealing their fate. Concealed firing positions, often hidden behind cleverly disguised masonry or within seemingly harmless towers flanking the passage, would suddenly come alive, unleashing a devastating volley on the trapped enemy. The idea was to create an overwhelming sense of confusion and panic, herding the attackers like cattle into a carefully constructed slaughterhouse. The core concept behind these features was the creation of a kill zone, a space where attackers were funneled, exposed, and systematically eliminated. Every architectural detail, from the height of the walls to the placement of the arrow slits, was calculated to maximize casualties among the attacking forces while minimizing risk to the defenders. The narrowness of the passages, the sharp turns, and the lack of visibility for the attackers all contributed to this deadly efficiency. These gatehouses were not merely passive obstacles. They were active participants in the castle's defense, designed to transform a perceived weakness into an overwhelming advantage. They embodied a ruthless efficiency, ensuring that any force attempting to bypass the true defenses would pay an astronomical price, effectively becoming a meat grinder for even the most determined siege armies. This level of meticulous design extended beyond the visible features, hinting at hidden mechanisms and unexpected surprises yet to be revealed. This brings us to one of the most cunning aspects of these defensive masterpieces: the deliberate creation of an illusion of vulnerability. It wasn't enough to simply create a trap. The defenders often went a step further, making these disguised gatehouses appear easier to breach than they actually were. Think about it: a besieging army, after weeks or even months of arduous efforts, is desperate for a weakness. They've likely tried scaling walls, undermining foundations, and launching countless projectiles. If suddenly a gatehouse appears to be less formidable, perhaps even slightly damaged or unguarded, it presents an irresistible target. This perceived vulnerability was a deliberate bait, a strategic lure designed to draw the attackers in, not to offer them passage, but to funnel them directly into a pre-planned ambush. This psychological manipulation was a crucial component of medieval defensive strategy. Defenders understood the human tendency to seek the path of least resistance, especially under the immense pressure of a siege. By subtly presenting a foe weakness, they could dictate the terms of engagement, forcing the enemy to attack precisely where the castle's defenses were strongest and most lethal. It wasn't about building the highest or thickest walls everywhere. It was about intelligently deploying resources to maximize the impact of a targeted assault. The goal was to create a scenario where the attackers, believing they were on the verge of victory, unknowingly marched into their own demise. They might have observed what looked like a neglected section, or perhaps a gate that seemed less heavily reinforced than others. This calculated deception preyed on their eagerness and their fatigue, transforming their hope into a deadly miscalculation. The architectural tricks used to achieve this illusion were ingenious. Sometimes it involved leaving certain sections of a seemingly vital gatehouse unadorned, or even partially unfinished in appearance, suggesting a rushed construction or a structural flaw. At other times, defenders might deliberately reduce visible patrols around a particular gate, creating the impression of a less vigilant watch. This wasn't negligence, it was a carefully orchestrated performance. Imagine the frustration of an attacking commander who has been repelled by seemingly impregnable walls, only to spot a narrow, less imposing gate that hints at an easier entry. That glimmer of hope, that perceived crack in the armor, was precisely what the defenders wanted them to see. It redirected their efforts, concentrating their forces in an area where the defenders held every advantage. This subtle yet powerful form of psychological warfare turned the attackers' own expectations against them, leading them willingly into a meticulously prepared kill zone, paving the way for the specific architectural deceptions that allowed these gatehouses to remain sealed to invaders. Beyond the grand deceptions of the main gatehouses and their elaborate traps, medieval castle builders also masterminded subtler forms of hidden access, structures sometimes referred to as the postern gate's secret cousin. These weren't the imposing, false entry points designed to lure an entire army into a kill zone. Instead, they were discreet, often concealed rear exits or hidden passages, cleverly integrated into seemingly innocuous parts of a larger structure. While not gatehouses in the traditional sense, their function overlapped in the realm of controlled, often clandestine, entry and exit, particularly when the main approaches were compromised or under siege. These secret passages were a testament to the comprehensive forethought that went into medieval defensive planning. They reflected an understanding that a castle, no matter how strong, needed mechanisms for internal flexibility and unexpected maneuvers. The primary purpose of these hidden exits was often for covert troop movements. Imagine a scenario where a castle garrison needed to launch a surprise sally against a besieging force, perhaps hitting them from an unexpected flank. A well-placed camouflaged postern, appearing to be nothing more than part of a garden wall or a shed, could allow a small contingent of soldiers to emerge unseen, executing a swift tactical strike before retreating back into the safety of the castle walls. This element of surprise could demoralize an attacking army as much as any direct engagement, forcing them to spread their forces thinner and constantly worry about unseen threats. These subtle gateways were about maintaining an element of unpredictability, ensuring that the defenders always held a wild card in their hand. Equally vital was their role in maintaining supply lines during prolonged sieges. Castles, despite their formidable defenses, were ultimately vulnerable to starvation if cut off from the outside world. A discreet rear exit, especially one leading to a hidden path or a boat landing on a river or lake, could be a lifeline. Small, agile groups might use these passages under the cover of darkness to bring in essential food, water, or even reinforcements, bypassing the main siege lines. These operations were incredibly risky, requiring a deep knowledge of the local terrain and perfect timing, but success could mean the difference between surrender and holding out until relief arrived. Such passages were often barely wider than a single person, easily barricaded from within, and expertly hidden from external view, perhaps behind dense foliage, a fake wall, or even an unassuming shed. Their very existence was often a closely guarded secret, known only to a select few within the castle's command. The genius of these disguised accesses lay in their subtlety and their ability to blend seamlessly into the castle's fabric, making them almost impossible for an attacker to identify or exploit. Unlike the grand, deceptive gatehouses, which were designed to be noticed and misused, these postern cousins were designed to be utterly invisible. They were about silent efficiency, enabling the defenders to adapt and respond to siege conditions in ways an attacker could never anticipate. This deep level of strategic thinking, where even the smallest architectural detail served a critical defensive purpose, further underlines the medieval engineers' commitment to creating structures that, in their core function, were never truly meant to be opened by an enemy. Beyond the subtle, hidden passages of postern gates, some medieval gatehouses truly defied conventional design, appearing in unusual shapes, placements, or even materials that made them either inconspicuous or profoundly confusing to an attacking force. These were not merely hidden but deliberately unconventional, a testament to the sheer ingenuity of engineers who dared to break traditional molds to achieve strategic surprise. Imagine an assaulting army trained to recognize typical gatehouse defenses, suddenly encountering something entirely alien to their expectations. This architectural defiance went beyond mere camouflage. It was about disrupting the attacker's mental map of the castle, sowing doubt, and forcing them to commit resources to defenses that were not what they seemed. One of the most striking ways they achieved this was through unusual shapes. While most gatehouses followed predictable rectilinear forms, some designers experimented with circular, octagonal, or even irregular shapes, especially when integrated into existing rock formations or older structures. This not only provided structural advantages, resisting the impact of projectiles more effectively than flat walls, but also made them harder to accurately survey and plan an attack against. A circular gatehouse might present no obvious corners for siege engines to concentrate their force, while an irregular one could be mistaken for a natural outcrop or part of the castle's domestic buildings from a distance. The visual confusion alone could buy crucial time for defenders, as attackers struggled to identify the true point of entry or the most vulnerable spot. This deviation from the norm was a calculated risk, betting that the element of surprise and disorientation would outweigh the familiarity of standard, predictable designs. Placement was another critical factor where ingenuity shone. Instead of the expected central position in a curtain wall, some gatehouses were tucked away in unexpected corners, partially concealed by terrain, or even designed to appear as if they were part of an outer bailey wall that offered no direct access to the inner stronghold. Think of a gatehouse nestled into a steep ravine, its approach obscured by dense tree cover, or one built into a natural cave system, seemingly leading nowhere. Such placements exploited the natural landscape, turning geographical features into formidable allies. An attacker might spend days probing what they thought were the castle's weak points, only to realize the actual, heavily fortified entrance was hidden from their initial reconnaissance. This strategic misdirection forced besiegers to expend resources and morale on fruitless assaults, diverting their attention from the true defensive strongholds. Furthermore, the choice of materials or their presentation could also contribute to deception. Some gatehouses might have been constructed with local stone that perfectly matched the surrounding geology, making them blend almost seamlessly into the landscape. Others might have incorporated elements that mimicked residential structures, like larger windows or less overtly military features, to disguise their true defensive purpose. Imagine a gatehouse that appeared to be nothing more than a stable or a simple barn on the castle's outer perimeter, when in reality it concealed murder holes, arrow slits, and a powerful portcullis. This architectural sleight of hand was about more than just hiding. It was about impersonation, convincing the enemy that a heavily fortified entrance was merely an innocent part of the castle's daily life, never meant to withstand a siege. These examples of unconventional design highlight the profound strategic depth of medieval military engineering, where every stone, every angle, and every placement was a deliberate decision contributing to the castle's overall defensive cunning. Moving even further into the realm of architectural cunning, some medieval castle builders applied a mind-bending tactic, deliberately constructing a gatehouse to appear partially ruined or structurally unsound. Imagine the sheer audacity of this strategy. Instead of reinforcing every inch, they would craft an illusion of weakness, a strategic flaw designed to lure an attacking army directly into a meticulously planned death trap. This wasn't just about camouflage, it was about weaponizing perception, using the very human tendency to seek out and exploit weaknesses against the attacker themselves. The art of simulated damage required incredible foresight and a deep understanding of siege warfare psychology. Consider a gatehouse with deliberately crumbling parapets, or a section of its walls seemingly eroded, perhaps even appearing to have a portion of its gate structure charred as if by a previous failed assault. From a distance, or even after initial reconnaissance, these vulnerabilities would scream, "Easy target" to an attacking force. Besiegers, always looking for the path of least resistance, would naturally concentrate their efforts and their most valuable siege engines against this seemingly damaged point. They would commit their best troops, their largest trebuchets, and their most intense focus to what they believed was a guaranteed breach. Yet, deep beneath that fabricated weakness, the gatehouse would be secretly reinforced with solid masonry, concealed murder holes, and hidden arrow slits, ready to unleash a devastating barrage on the unsuspecting attackers who had fallen for the defenders' ruse. This sophisticated form of architectural misdirection served multiple crucial purposes. Firstly, it funneled the attacking army exactly where the defenders wanted them, into a killing zone. Rather than having to guess where the main assault would come, the defenders engineered the attack to converge on a specific, heavily prepared position. This allowed them to pre-position archers, crossbowmen, and boiling oil, maximizing their defensive efficiency and the casualties inflicted upon the enemy. Secondly, it diverted attention and resources away from the castle's true, unblemished strong points and genuine entryways, which remained heavily guarded but unprovoked. The attackers would waste valuable time, energy, and lives battering against a phantom weakness while the real defensive measures stood ready elsewhere. This psychological game played directly into the attackers' expectations, transforming their perceived advantage into a devastating liability. The ingenuity of the broken gatehouse also highlights a critical aspect of why many of these disguised structures were never meant to open in the traditional sense. Their primary function wasn't to facilitate passage but to repel, trap, or utterly destroy anyone attempting forced entry. By appearing vulnerable, they actively courted the very confrontation they were designed to win overwhelmingly. It was a calculated risk, betting that the enemy's overconfidence in exploiting a damaged section would lead them right into a lethal ambush. This level of defensive trickery underscores the relentless innovation of medieval military engineers, who employed every possible means, including psychological warfare, to safeguard their strongholds and ensure that certain gates remained eternally sealed against hostile intrusion. Just as defenders sometimes created the illusion of weakness to disorient attackers, they also frequently employed another layer of architectural cunning, completely hiding the primary access point to their strongest sanctuary, the castle keep. Envision the keep as the heart of the castle, the ultimate refuge where the lord and his most loyal defenders made their final stand. Logic would dictate that the entrance to this vital stronghold would be the most heavily fortified, the most obvious point of defense. Yet, in a testament to their strategic brilliance, medieval engineers often designed these accesses to be almost invisible, a disguised gatehouse that was truly never meant to be found by an invading army, let alone breached. The strategic rationale behind concealing the keep's entrance was profoundly simple yet incredibly effective. If an attacking force managed to breach the outer and inner curtain walls, they would still be faced with the challenge of taking the keep itself. By obscuring its primary entrance, defenders could force attackers to expend precious time and resources searching for a way in, constantly exposing them to defensive fire from the keep's battlements. This frustration and confusion could be demoralizing, turning what should have been the final, decisive assault into a drawn-out, costly, and ultimately futile endeavor. Imagine the besiegers having fought their way through multiple layers of defense, only to find themselves circling the impenetrable stone walls of the keep, desperately seeking an entry that simply wasn't where they expected it to be. These hidden entrances often took various forms. Sometimes they were small, unassuming doorways tucked away in unexpected corners, perhaps at an upper level accessible only by a retractable wooden staircase or a ladder that could be pulled up. Other times, the entrance might be located on a side of the keep facing away from the main line of attack, approachable only through a narrow, winding passage within the castle walls themselves, a labyrinth designed to disorient and trap any intruders. There might be no external gate at all, merely a cleverly disguised postern or a heavily barred and concealed door that blended seamlessly with the surrounding stonework. The key was to make it appear as if the keep had no direct ground-level access, forcing attackers to consider more difficult, time-consuming, and resource-intensive options like undermining the walls or attempting to scale them. This tactic ensured that the castle's ultimate stronghold remained as secure and inaccessible as humanly possible, even if the rest of the fortress had fallen. It was an essential component of a multi-layered defense, a final, almost desperate measure to buy time, secure the lord and his household, and potentially await relief. The keep's disguised entrance was not designed for grand processions or easy passage. It was a testament to the medieval understanding of psychological warfare and architectural deception, turning the very heart of the castle into a booby trap for any would-be conqueror. It represented the pinnacle of defensive design, embodying the principle that some gates were truly intended to remain sealed forever against hostile incursions, like the one we find at Bodiam Castle. At Bodiam Castle in England, we find an exceptional example of this strategic deception in its outer bailey entrance. From a distance, Bodiam Castle appears to be the quintessential romantic fortress, seemingly floating on water, its imposing towers and walls reflecting in the broad moats. The outer gatehouse, in particular, looks quite grand and accessible, almost inviting. This appearance, however, was a meticulously crafted illusion, designed not for convenient entry but for lethal deterrence. The castle's builders, understanding the psychology of siege warfare, intended this gatehouse to be a massive lure, drawing an attacking force directly into a series of pre-planned kill zones long before they could even think about reaching the main castle. The gatehouse at Bodiam wasn't simply a door, it was the entry point to a gauntlet of death. Its seemingly vulnerable position, connected to the land by a single, narrow causeway, was a deliberate trap. As attacking forces advanced along this exposed path, they would have been funneled into a highly constricted area, completely exposed to devastating crossfire from the castle's numerous arrow slits and battlements. This wasn't a gatehouse meant for direct frontal assault and breaching. It was a sophisticated filtering mechanism designed to wear down and decimate an enemy long before they could even touch the inner walls. The very approach was a defense in itself, making the act of reaching the gatehouse a deadly undertaking. Beyond the causeway, the design of the gatehouse continued its deceptive work. Once an attacker theoretically made it past the initial barrage and through the outer gate, they would find themselves in a tightly enclosed courtyard, a classic killing ground. This area was surrounded by high walls, again bristling with defensive positions, ensuring that any force condensed within its confines would be at the mercy of the defenders above. The entire structure was a masterclass in indirect defense, where the gate wasn't meant to be forced open but rather to shepherd the enemy into an inescapable death trap. It was a gate that silently screamed, "Do not enter," through its ingenious layout, prioritizing the defense of the castle over any semblance of easy access, embodying the idea of a formidable obstacle rather than a welcoming threshold. Moving from Bodiam, we shift our focus to the majestic Carefilly Castle in Wales, home to our second example of a disguised gatehouse. Here, the East Gatehouse stands as a testament to medieval defensive ingenuity, a structure so well integrated into an elaborate concentric defense system that it effectively became a non-entry point for any would-be invader. Carefilly is famous for its groundbreaking use of water defenses, and this gatehouse is a prime illustration of how those watery barriers transformed simple access into an insurmountable obstacle. The castle isn't just surrounded by a moat, it's enveloped by a series of artificial lakes and canals, creating a formidable watery labyrinth that cushioned its walls against direct assault. This environment made any approach to the East Gatehouse a logistical nightmare for an attacking army. The East Gatehouse itself was not merely a standalone structure, it was an integral piece of a layered defensive puzzle. Imagine an army attempting to reach it. They would first have to contend with wide, deep moats, not just one but several, effectively turning the castle into an island within islands. These water defenses weren't just for show. They made it impossible to bring up siege engines, scaling ladders, or even large numbers of troops with any speed or efficiency. Any assault would involve a slow, exposed crossing, where soldiers would be vulnerable to a constant barrage of projectiles from the castle's numerous firing positions. The East Gatehouse, therefore, was shielded not just by its own masonry, but by vast expanses of water that forced attackers to expose themselves in a way that was almost suicidal. Furthermore, Carefilly Castle's design exemplifies the concept of concentric defense, where multiple rings of walls and towers provide layered protection. The East Gatehouse was situated within this intricate network, meaning that even if an attacker somehow managed to navigate the water defenses and reach its immediate vicinity, they would then face a series of formidable walls and gates, each designed to slow, funnel, and decimate their forces. The very architecture of the castle worked in concert with the natural and artificial landscape to create a virtually impenetrable barrier. This gatehouse was never intended to be breached by force because the entire system was designed to render a frontal assault obsolete. Its purpose was not to be a point of access, but rather a point of ultimate resistance, a psychological and physical deterrent that warned any enemy away, making it a gate that, for all intents and purposes, was never meant for opening. From the water-girded strength of Wales, we journey far eastward to Syria, where the legendary Krak des Chevaliers stands as our third example of a disguised gatehouse, a structure whose main entrance was a masterpiece of lethal design. This isn't just a gate, it's a funnel of death, an architectural expression of pure, unadulterated hostility designed to make direct assault on the gate itself an act of suicidal folly. The Krak des Chevaliers, a Crusader castle, is renowned for its immense scale and defensive sophistication, and its main entrance perfectly encapsulates the brutal pragmatism of medieval military engineering. Unlike the subtle deceptions of some gatehouses, the Krak's main entrance is an overt threat, daring attackers to approach. But here's the twist: the path to the gate forces any invading army into a heavily angled, tortuous spiral. Imagine trying to maneuver hundreds, even thousands of armed soldiers through a narrow, winding corridor while under constant attack. This approach wasn't about concealment. It was about control, about forcing the enemy into a precise, unavoidable killing zone. As attackers entered this spiraling passage, they would be immediately disoriented, losing formation and cohesion, becoming easy targets for the defenders positioned above. Every inch of this tortuous pathway was designed to inflict maximum damage. Murder holes above would rain down projectiles, boiling oil, or even massive stones onto the trapped soldiers below. Arrow slits and firing ports lined the walls, allowing defenders to unleash a relentless barrage from multiple angles, creating a devastating crossfire. The sharp turns meant that battering rams or siege towers, instruments of direct assault, were rendered useless. They simply couldn't be brought to bear against the actual gate, which remained safely nestled at the end of this deadly maze. This wasn't a gate you could simply smash through. It was an engagement in itself, a prolonged, gruesome battle fought on the castle's terms. The very design of the Krak's main entrance transformed what should have been a point of vulnerability into its most potent defensive feature. It became a killing alley, a meat grinder for any besieging force. The gate itself was almost an afterthought, protected not by its own strength alone, but by the sheer impossibility of reaching it in any effective formation. For any commander contemplating an assault on Krak des Chevaliers, the sight of that winding, angled approach would have been a stark warning. This gate was not meant to open for you, and attempting to force it would surely lead to utter destruction. It remains one of the most chillingly effective examples of a gatehouse designed to repel rather than admit. From the lethal embrace of Krak des Chevaliers, we return to the rugged beauty of Wales, to Conway Castle, where our fourth disguised gatehouse, or rather its protective Barbican, stands as a testament to strategic foresight. Conway Castle, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is renowned for its immense walls and towers, and its Barbican exemplifies a truly sophisticated approach to defense. This wasn't merely a gatehouse, it was a detached fortification, a forward outpost designed to act as an advanced defensive screen, protecting the main gatehouse behind it with a cunning blend of delay and attrition. Think of Conway's Barbican as the castle's extended arm, reaching out to meet the enemy long before they could even dream of touching the main entrance. Its primary purpose was to slow and harry attackers, to break their momentum and cohesion. Unlike the spiraling death trap of Krak des Chevaliers, Conway's Barbican created a critical choke point, a bottleneck through which very few would ever successfully pass. Imagine an invading army laden with siege equipment attempting to navigate this formidable barrier. They would be forced into a narrow, exposed pathway susceptible to fire from multiple angles. This Barbican wasn't built for easy entry. It was a deliberate obstacle, a gauntlet designed to inflict maximum damage and demoralization. Defenders stationed within its walls would unleash a relentless barrage of arrows, stones, and other projectiles, raining down on the exposed attackers. Any attempt to bring up a battering ram or siege tower would be met with fierce resistance, as the Barbican's design made such large-scale equipment incredibly difficult to maneuver and deploy effectively. The very act of engaging with the Barbican would exhaust the attacking force, depleting their numbers and their resolve, long before they could even consider a direct assault on the castle's true gate. The genius of Conway's Barbican lies in its ability to absorb the initial shock of an attack, redirecting the enemy's focus and energy away from the more vulnerable points of the castle. It was a strategic buffer, a formidable barrier that separated the eager attacker from their coveted prize. This detachment also meant that even if the Barbican were eventually breached, the main gatehouse would remain intact and fully functional, ready to face a weakened and demoralized foe. In essence, Conway's Barbican served as a sacrificial pawn in a larger game of chess, a delaying tactic that turned a direct charge into a drawn-out, costly affair, demonstrating its undeniable role as a powerful, unyielding obstruction, never meant for hostile passage. From Conway's strategic Barbican, we turn our attention to another Welsh marvel, Harlech Castle, and its truly unique Watergate. This isn't a traditional gatehouse in the sense of a grand entrance, but rather a specialized point of access that exemplifies the theme of structures never meant for widespread hostile use. Harlech Castle itself is dramatically perched on a formidable cliff overlooking Tremadoc Bay, a truly imposing sight that gave it natural defenses on three sides. Its Watergate, however, was a clever solution to a very particular problem: how to resupply a castle under siege when land routes were cut off. The Watergate at Harlech provided indirect access from the sea, a lifeline for the castle's defenders, allowing for covert movement of troops, supplies, or even for sending out messengers during a prolonged siege. But while it was a vital artery for the castle, it was anything but an easy entry point for an attacking force. Imagine trying to mount a large-scale invasion through this narrow, winding passage, exposed to the unforgiving Welsh weather and the watchful eyes of the castle garrison. The approach to the Watergate was incredibly challenging, requiring attackers to navigate a steep, often precarious path, or more likely, to approach directly from the turbulent waters of the bay. This inherent difficulty made it highly impractical for any significant force to attempt a breach here. This gate was heavily fortified despite its seemingly humble dimensions. It wasn't designed to withstand the kind of direct, battering ram assault that a main gatehouse might face, precisely because its approach naturally deterred such tactics. Instead, it was secured with strong doors and positioned to allow defenders to rain down projectiles on anyone attempting to ascend from the beach or disembark from a small boat. The defenders within the castle would have held a commanding position, making any attempt to force this gate a suicidal endeavor for besiegers. Its limited size and the treacherous terrain surrounding it meant that only a handful of individuals could approach at any one time, allowing the castle's forces to easily repel them with minimal risk. Functioning more as an emergency exit or a clandestine supply route than a primary entry, Harlech's Watergate embodies the paradox of a castle opening that was primarily a defensive barrier. It was a controlled point meant for the defenders' limited strategic use and presented an insurmountable obstacle to any large-scale hostile intrusion. It perfectly illustrates how an entrance could be designed so ingeniously that it fundamentally became a mechanism for defense, ensuring that any enemy foolish enough to attempt passage through it would meet a swift and decisive end. From the rugged Welsh coast, we journey south to Italy, to a place shrouded in far more mystery, the enigmatic Castel del Monte. Here, our sixth disguised gatehouse presents a puzzle of an entirely different nature. Unlike the clear defensive purpose of Harlech's Watergate, Castel del Monte's main entrance is deceptively grand, fitting for a structure so unique it stands apart from almost every other castle of its era. Built by Emperor Frederick II in the middle of the 13th century, this octagonal fortress in Puglia, southern Italy, puzzles historians to this day. Its layout, with 8 towers and 8 sides, is geometrically perfect, almost obsessively so, but its defensive capabilities seem almost secondary, particularly concerning its main entry. The theories surrounding Castel del Monte's primary function are vast and varied. Some suggest it was a hunting lodge, a place for imperial recreation. Others propose it was an astronomical observatory, a temple of knowledge reflecting Frederick's deep interest in science and mathematics. Still more speculate it was a symbolic crown, a testament to the Holy Roman Emperor's power and intellectual prowess. What most agree on, however, is that it wasn't primarily designed as a conventional military stronghold meant to withstand long sieges or direct assaults, and this is where its main entrance becomes so intriguing. Upon first glance, the main entrance of Castel del Monte appears inviting. It's a beautifully crafted portal flanked by 2 towers, suggesting a welcoming rather than a fortress-like approach. Yet, when you examine its practical defensive features, they seem almost perfunctory compared to the elaborate kill zones and layered defenses we've seen in other gatehouses. There are no portcullises that would instantly drop to trap an attacking force, no murder holes positioned strategically to rain down death, and the approach itself lacks the tortuous twists designed to break up formations. This absence of typical gatehouse defenses strongly implies that this gate, while visually impressive, was never intended to face a hostile breach. It was built for prestige and control, not for combat. The subtle message conveyed by this entrance is one of absolute authority and undisputed sovereignty, rather than a readiness for battle. It suggests that any perceived threat would be dealt with long before it reached this symbolic gateway. The castle's location atop a hill, commanding sweeping views of the surrounding landscape, provided a natural defense against surprise attacks. For Emperor Frederick, the function of this entrance was to regulate who entered his inner sanctum, to signify status and order, rather than to repel an invading army. It speaks volumes about an emperor who considered himself a philosopher king, whose dominion was rarely challenged directly. This gate was an entrance to a residence, a court, or even a school of thought, where intellectual and political power were exercised, not a bulwark against an external enemy. Therefore, for attackers, it was effectively a gate that, by its very design and the castle's purpose, was never meant for hostile opening, reinforcing the idea that some gatehouses were more about establishing control and projecting power than repelling physical threats. From the symbolic power of Castel del Monte, we now journey to the dramatic landscapes of the Scottish Highlands, to the iconic Eilean Donan Castle. Here, our 7th disguised gatehouse offers a masterclass in how a castle's entire approach can become its most formidable defense, turning a seemingly simple entry point into an almost insurmountable obstacle. Eilean Donan, nestled at the confluence of 3 sea lochs, is renowned for its picturesque setting, but beneath its beauty lies a strategic brilliance that many overlook. The castle itself sits on a small tidal island, connected to the mainland by a long, narrow stone causeway and bridge. It is this causeway, rather than the gatehouse at its end, that truly embodies the spirit of a gate never meant to be opened by force. Imagine approaching Eilean Donan in the Middle Ages, perhaps as part of an attacking force. Your journey begins not at the castle walls, but far earlier on the mainland. You'd first have to navigate rough, unforgiving terrain before even seeing the castle clearly. Once sighted, the only path forward is the causeway, a long, exposed stretch of stone that offers absolutely no cover. This causeway acts as a natural funnel, forcing any attacking army into a single file or narrow column, completely exposed to missile fire from the castle. Every step an attacker took along this bridge was a step into a meticulously crafted kill zone, turning the approach itself into a gauntlet of immense danger. The defenders, positioned within the castle and its gatehouse towers, would have had an unrivaled vantage point, able to rain down arrows, rocks, and other projectiles with devastating accuracy upon anyone attempting to cross. The gatehouse at the end of this causeway, while robust, functioned less as a primary defensive barrier to be breached and more as the final choke point in an already deadly approach. Its purpose was to control the flow of traffic, allowing friendly forces passage while serving as the ultimate bottleneck for any hostile attempt. By the time an enemy force even reached the gatehouse, they would have likely been decimated by the journey across the causeway, their formations broken and their morale shattered. The gatehouse itself, therefore, became almost redundant in terms of receiving the initial brunt of an assault. It was shielded by the very path leading to it. This ingenious design highlights a crucial aspect of medieval defensive strategy, utilizing natural topography to amplify architectural defenses. The causeway at Eilean Donan isn't just a bridge. It's an extension of the castle's defensive system, a long, thin spear thrust out into the loch, designed to impale any attacking force before it could even lay a hand on the gate. It meant that this gatehouse, while physically present, was rarely, if ever, subjected to the kind of direct, sustained assault that other castles faced. Its protection came from the impossible journey to reach it, making it another prime example of a gate that was never meant for hostile opening, because the approach made such an attempt almost suicidal. From the dramatic and scenic defenses of Eilean Donan, we now shift our focus to the imposing and historically critical Dover Castle in England, home to our 8th disguised gatehouse, the Constable's Gate. This colossal structure isn't just a gate. It is a declaration, a formidable barrier designed not simply to repel attackers, but to deter them entirely from even considering a frontal assault. Standing as a sentinel over the English Channel, Dover Castle has earned the moniker "Key to England" for good reason, and the Constable's Gate perfectly embodies this strategic importance. Unlike some of the more subtle deceptions we've explored, the Constable's Gate at Dover relies on sheer, overwhelming presence and an intricate series of layered defenses. Picture a gatehouse so massive, so heavily fortified that its very appearance screams impervious. This wasn't about hiding, it was about broadcasting an undeniable message of impregnability. Constructed during the reign of King Henry II and later bolstered by King Henry III, this gatehouse became the primary entrance to the Inner Bailey, protected by a vast network of ditches, earthworks, and multiple curtain walls that extended far beyond its immediate vicinity. The design of the Constable's Gate was a masterclass in dissuasion. It boasted two massive D-shaped towers flanking a central passage, each capable of housing substantial garrisons and artillery. The passage itself was a death trap, equipped with multiple portcullises, heavy doors, and murder holes, creating a series of inner chambers where attackers would be caught in a deadly crossfire. But what truly made this gatehouse unopenable by force was not just its internal mechanisms, but the sheer scale of the outer defenses it commanded. Any army attempting to reach this gate would first have to navigate a sprawling, complex system of earthworks and outworks designed to break up formations, exhaust troops, and funnel them into killing zones long before they ever reached the main gateway. This strategic layout meant that the Constable's Gate rarely, if ever, faced a direct, concentrated siege attempt. Its purpose was to send a clear message. Attempting to breach this point would be a catastrophic waste of lives and resources. The immense effort and resources invested in its construction served as a psychological deterrent, making any would-be aggressor think twice. It was a gateway designed to be respected, to be feared, and ultimately to remain unbreached. Its presence was so intimidating that it largely fulfilled its defensive role by simply existing, embodying the ultimate in unopenable medieval architecture. Moving from the sheer, intimidating presence of Dover Castle's Constable's Gate, we journey westward to Wales, where Pembroke Castle presents another stunning example of a gatehouse designed for the ultimate in protection. Its main gatehouse, our 9th disguised gatehouse, is not just a point of entry. It is a fortress within a fortress, meticulously engineered to be an almost insurmountable obstacle, effectively sealing the castle against any hostile breaches. What makes Pembroke Castle's main gatehouse so remarkable is its integration into a sophisticated concentric defense system. Imagine approaching this colossal structure, only to find that the journey to its inner sanctum is a gauntlet of defensive layers. This wasn't merely a single gate to overcome. Instead, attackers faced a series of formidable challenges, each designed to inflict maximum damage and demoralize the advancing force. The gatehouse itself housed multiple drawbridges, each spanning a deep ditch or a water-filled moat, ensuring that even if one barrier was overcome, another immediately presented itself. These drawbridges were not just simple wooden planks. They were heavy, reinforced structures that could be quickly raised, trapping any unfortunate souls caught between them. Behind each drawbridge, nestled within the gatehouse's thick stone walls, stood several portcullises. These iron-shod wooden grills, weighing hundreds if not thousands of pounds, could descend with terrifying speed, slicing through anything in their path and creating an iron curtain that proved incredibly difficult to lift or bypass. And if by some miracle an attacker managed to get past the drawbridges and portcullises, they would find themselves in a constricted passage, a killing alley where arrows, rocks, and boiling liquids could rain down from murder holes above. This intricate layering meant that the gatehouse had no single weak point. Instead, it presented a relentless series of increasingly deadly traps. The strategic genius behind Pembroke's main gatehouse lay in its ability to create successive layers of resistance. Any direct attempt to force an entry would not just be met with opposition. it would result in catastrophic losses for the attacker. Each step forward brought them deeper into a pre-planned kill zone, exposed to fire from multiple angles with no easy way to retreat. This design effectively turned the main gatehouse into an unyielding choke point, a place where an attacking army's momentum would be irrevocably broken and its numbers drastically reduced. It was a testament to the medieval engineers' understanding of defensive architecture, transforming a mere gateway into an impenetrable bastion, truly never meant to be opened by force. From the multi-layered defences of Pembroke, we pivot to another English marvel, Warwick Castle, home to our 10th disguised gatehouse. Here, the engineers perfected an elaborate gatehouse and Barbican system, creating a deadly, layered defense that transformed the very approach to the castle into a formidable killing ground. This wasn't merely a static barrier but a dynamic, active component of the castle's protection, designed to methodically dismantle any attacking force long before they could even think about reaching the true castle gates. The entire setup was a prime example of defensive over-engineering, making direct assault not just difficult but virtually suicidal. Imagine for a moment trying to storm Warwick Castle. Your army would first encounter the Barbican, a detached, fortified outwork strategically positioned to break up any coherent attacking formation. This wasn't a simple wall. It was a complex structure with its own defensive capabilities, designed to force attackers into a narrow, exposed path. As your troops funneled into this constricted space, they would immediately come under intense, concentrated fire from various angles. Arrows would rain down from murder holes, and heavy stones could be dropped from battlements, turning the approach into a perilous gauntlet. The Barbican's purpose was to disrupt, funnel, and weaken the enemy, softening them up for the even more lethal challenges ahead. Once past the Barbican, the true horrors of the main gatehouse would become apparent. This multi-story structure housed not one but several portcullises, each a massive timber and iron barrier that could be dropped in an instant, effectively trapping any attackers caught between them. The passageway leading through the gatehouse was deliberately long and winding, preventing attackers from using battering rams or siege engines effectively. Every turn, every passage was lined with hidden firing positions and machicolations, allowing defenders to unleash a devastating barrage of projectiles, boiling water, or even quicklime onto the invaders below. This intricate design ensured that a sustained assault on the actual castle gates was practically impossible. Any attempt would be met with overwhelming resistance, guaranteeing immense losses for the aggressors. The genius of Warwick Castle's gatehouse and Barbican system lay in its psychological impact as much as its physical strength. The sheer complexity of the approach, the relentless gauntlet of defenses, and the high probability of devastating casualties were enough to deter many would-be attackers. It communicated an unequivocal message. This castle was not to be trifled with. The defenders understood that demoralizing the enemy, breaking their spirit and resolve, was just as important as breaking their formations. By turning the approach into an almost impenetrable barrier, Warwick Castle's gatehouse effectively fulfilled its role as a disguised, unopenable entry, ensuring its strategic value as a deterrent rather than merely a point of access. From the formidable defences of Warwick, we now journey to the pristine concentric design of Beaumaris Castle in Wales, where the outer gateways serve as our 11th disguised gatehouse. Beaumaris is often hailed as a pinnacle of medieval military architecture, a nearly perfect example of concentric fortification. Its design was not merely about building strong walls. It was about creating an intricate system where every element worked in concert to control, channel, and ultimately neutralize threats. The outer gateways, while appearing as entry points, were in fact integral components of an elaborate water defense system, transforming them into sophisticated choke points rather than simple passages. Picture Beaumaris Castle surrounded by its vast moats, meticulously engineered to be both a protective barrier and an active part of its defense. The outer gateways were strategically placed to exploit this watery expanse. Any attacker attempting to approach these gateways would first have to contend with crossing the moat, often under a hail of projectiles from the castle's numerous firing points. The water itself, sometimes tidal, presented a significant obstacle, turning what might seem like a straightforward path into a treacherous undertaking. These gateways were not designed for easy navigation. They were bottlenecks, forcing any would-be invaders into predictable lines of advance, where their movements could be anticipated and countered with devastating efficiency. The genius of Beaumaris's outer gateways lay in their ability to channel attackers into precisely defined kill zones. Once across the moat, invaders would find themselves in the narrow space between the outer and inner walls, a deadly corridor where they would be exposed to relentless crossfire. Archers positioned in the numerous towers and wall walks could unleash a continuous volleys of arrows, while defenders above could drop stones, boiling liquids, or other projectiles with precision. The gates themselves, with their multiple portcullises and heavy doors, were designed to be sealed instantly, trapping attackers within these confined spaces. This meticulous design ensured that any force attempting to breach these outer gateways would be severely decimated long before they could even contemplate assaulting the inner castle. Furthermore, these outer gateways acted as control points, regulating access even for friendly traffic. They weren't just about keeping enemies out, but about managing the flow of everything and everyone in and out of the castle. This level of control, combined with the devastating defensive capabilities, cemented their role not as welcoming entrances, but as formidable barriers. They were never meant to be easily opened for an attacking army. Their purpose was to be closed to trap and to destroy. This philosophy of defense, where access was inherently dangerous, solidifies Beaumaris's outer gateways as quintessential examples of disguised gatehouses, designed to deter and devastate rather than simply offer passage. Moving from the intricate water defenses of Beaumaris, our journey brings us to the imposing Alnwick Castle in England, home to our 12th disguised gatehouse, its robust Barbican. Alnwick's Barbican wasn't merely an architectural flourish. It was a strategically placed, advanced defensive outpost designed to utterly dismantle any attacking force before it could even dream of reaching the castle's main gates. Think of it as the ultimate bouncer for a medieval stronghold, ensuring that only the most determined and significantly weakened visitors ever got close. This structure stands as a testament to the ingenious ways medieval engineers used outer defenses to protect inner sanctums, transforming what might seem like a direct entrance into an insurmountable barrier. This formidable Barbican at Alnwick served a crucial purpose: to break up attacking formations. Imagine a disciplined army, shields locked, marching in a tight phalanx towards the castle. The Barbican's design, often featuring a constricted entryway or a series of turns, would immediately disrupt this order. Soldiers would be forced to funnel through narrow passages, losing their cohesion and becoming vulnerable targets. This wasn't just about slowing them down, it was about stripping away their tactical advantages, turning an organized assault into a chaotic scramble. Once inside the Barbican's confines, attackers would find themselves in a deadly killing ground, trapped and exposed. Within the Barbican, attackers were forced into compromised positions, making them easy prey for Alnwick's defenders. Overlooking the confined space, archers and crossbowmen would rain down volleys from strategic firing slits and murder holes, creating a relentless storm of projectiles. The Barbican's walls themselves would be studded with these openings, allowing defenders to unleash devastating fire from multiple angles, leaving attackers nowhere to hide. Any attempt to batter down the inner gate of the Barbican would be met with overwhelming resistance, as the tight space prevented the effective use of siege engines, and the exposed positions of the siege crew would make them prime targets for the defenders above. This forced vulnerability was a key component of its defensive strategy, turning the Barbican from a mere gateway into a literal death trap. The primary function of Alnwick's Barbican was to make the main gatehouse behind it effectively unassailable by direct charge. By the time any remnants of an attacking force managed to push through the Barbican, they would be so depleted, disorganized, and demoralized that a direct assault on the truly formidable main gate would be an almost impossible feat. This layered defense ensured that the castle's most critical entry point was shielded by a gauntlet so severe that few would ever pass it intact. It wasn't about inviting passage, it was about ensuring that passage was, for an enemy, utterly out of the question. This protective function, transforming an apparent entryway into a terminal obstacle, perfectly exemplifies the concept of a gatehouse never truly meant to open to an invading army. Leaving the robust Barbicans of England, we now turn our attention to the magnificent citadel of Carcassonne in France, home to our 13th disguised gatehouse. Carcassonne isn't just a castle, it's an entire fortified city, a sprawling testament to medieval defensive engineering, and its main gatehouse stands as a prime example of ultimate deterrent architecture. This immense gateway is part of a defensive system so vast and complex that it essentially renders any direct assault on the gate itself a fool's errand. It's surrounded by no fewer than 2 formidable concentric curtain walls, bristling with towers, each designed to inflict maximum damage on any approaching foe. The sheer scale of Carcassonne's defenses meant that its main gatehouse was almost certainly never intended to be directly breached by an enemy. Imagine trying to force your way through this gate. First, you'd have to navigate a wide, open approach exposed to fire from multiple towers. Then, you'd face the first massive curtain wall, needing to breach its gate or scale its imposing height, all while defenders rained down projectiles from above. Succeed in that, and you're not in the city yet. You'd find yourself in a narrow, confined space between the 2 curtain walls, a killing ground where every step would be under relentless attack from both the inner and outer walls. Only then, after suffering catastrophic losses, would you even begin to contemplate attacking the main gatehouse itself. This strategic positioning within such an extensive defensive network transformed Carcassonne's main gatehouse from a mere entry point into an unassailable bastion. Its primary role wasn't to invite passage, but to repel it through sheer intimidation and overwhelming defensive capability. Attackers would look upon this monumental complex and understand the futility of a direct charge, opting instead for a lengthy, resource-draining siege, which Carcassonne was also built to withstand. The gate's formidable size, reinforced by layers of walls, towers, and a deep ditch, communicated a clear message: this entrance was impregnable. The design of Carcassonne's main gatehouse, coupled with the labyrinthine defenses surrounding it, served as a powerful psychological weapon. It wasn't just about physical barriers, it was about crushing the morale of any attacking force before they even drew close. The very sight of this interconnected marvel of medieval military architecture would inspire awe and despair in equal measure, convincing besiegers that a frontal assault was suicidal. It embodied the pinnacle of deterrent design, ensuring that this particular gate, though seemingly a primary entrance, was in effect sealed against any hostile breach, a silent guardian that declared, "You shall not pass." Moving from the sprawling defences of Carcassonne, we now turn our attention to Chepstow Castle in Wales, home to our 14th disguised gatehouse. Chepstow's main gate presents a fascinating study in how natural topography can be expertly integrated into defensive architecture to create a formidable, seemingly inaccessible entry point. Unlike some of the other gatehouses we've explored, which relied heavily on elaborate architectural tricks, Chepstow's gate leveraged its perilous location to become a point of absolute resistance, rather than an accessible, welcoming entry. Imagine an attacker approaching Chepstow Castle. The main gate, while visually imposing, isn't just standing alone. It's built directly into a linear defense system perched precariously along a narrow, steep limestone ridge. This natural incline makes a frontal assault incredibly difficult, as any attacking force would be forced to climb uphill, exposed to fire from multiple angles. It's not just a gate, it's the culmination of a tortuous approach. The designers understood that the terrain itself could be the first and most effective line of defense, making any attempt to simply breach the gate a logistical nightmare long before anyone even laid a hand on a battering ram. Consider the sheer effort involved in trying to bring siege equipment against this gate. The narrowness and steepness of the ridge would have rendered most large siege engines impractical, if not impossible, to deploy effectively. Attackers would find themselves trying to maneuver heavy equipment on uneven, exposed ground, all while defenders rained down arrows, stones, and other projectiles from the relative safety of the castle walls above. The gate itself might have looked like a conventional entry, but its strategic placement transformed it into a choke point designed to funnel attackers into a deadly gauntlet, exhausting their resources and manpower before they could even properly engage the gate. This combination of natural defenses and formidable design meant Chepstow's main gate was never truly an accessible entry in the traditional sense. It was a deterrent, a declaration of impregnability built into the very landscape. It communicated clearly to any would-be attacker that direct assault was futile, forcing them to consider other, less direct, and often more time-consuming and costly strategies. The gate became less about providing access and more about denying it, making it a compelling example of a gatehouse that was meticulously planned and integrated to be a point of unyielding resistance, effectively sealing itself off from any hostile approach. From Wales, we now leap across the Irish Sea to Scotland for our 15th and final disguised gatehouse example, the formidable Gatehouse of Edinburgh Castle. Perched dramatically atop an extinct volcanic crag, this gatehouse serves as a masterful conclusion to our series, epitomizing the very essence of a structure designed never to open to an invading force. Its defensive strategy wasn't solely about its construction, but intrinsically linked to the very ground it stood upon. Visualize the sheer audacity required to even consider a direct assault on Edinburgh Castle's main gatehouse. The castle's location on what's famously known as Castle Rock presents an almost insuperable natural barrier. Three sides of the rock face are virtually sheer cliffs, rendering large-scale attack from those directions impossible. This funnels any potential aggressor directly toward the east-facing approach, the only realistic route to the gatehouse. This approach, while less precipitous than the other sides, is still a steep, winding ascent, highly exposed and easily defended from above. Engineers didn't just build a gatehouse, they exploited geology, transforming the very landscape into an active participant in the castle's defense. The gatehouse itself, known as the Portcullis Gate, is a robust and imposing structure, but its strength is amplified 100-fold by its setting. Any attacking army would be forced into a slow, arduous climb with no cover, all while being subjected to a relentless barrage from the castle's defenders positioned high on the walls and towers. This isn't just about a strong gate, it's about a strategically chosen bottleneck that would exhaust and decimate an enemy long before they ever reached the gate's heavy timber and iron. The robust construction of the gatehouse was almost secondary to the natural defenses, serving as a final, immovable barrier for the few, if any, attackers who might miraculously make it that far. The purpose of Edinburgh Castle's gatehouse was clear: to act as an enduring obstacle, a symbol of impregnability. It wasn't designed to be a welcoming entrance or even a common point of passage for large forces, but rather to repel, deter, and ultimately defeat any direct assault. Its design, combined with its unparalleled natural position, made it a fortress within a fortress, a gate that, by its very nature and location, was never truly meant to be forced open by an enemy. It stands as a testament to medieval ingenuity, where architecture and geography conspired to create an unyielding point of defense, ensuring that any attempt to breach it would result in catastrophic failure for the attacker. Our journey through these nearly 24 disguised gatehouses, from the subtle to the spectacularly obvious in their unopenable nature, brings us to a profound understanding of medieval military engineering. These weren't just stone structures, they were the physical embodiment of strategic thinking, the apex of defensive design, and a masterclass in psychological warfare. They represent moments when human ingenuity, faced with constant threats, pushed the boundaries of what was possible with available resources and technology. The builders and engineers of these castles understood that protection wasn't just about thick walls and high towers. It was about controlling the battleground, disorienting the enemy, and forcing them into a position of weakness before they even reached a true point of contact. This comprehensive understanding of their environment, combined with an almost artistic flair for deception, allowed them to transform seemingly simple access points into impenetrable fortresses, turning a castle's potential vulnerability into its greatest strength. The lessons gleaned from these incredible examples extend far beyond the medieval battlefield. Consider the concept of layered defense, a principle these gatehouses perfected. Each obstacle, whether a winding approach, a blind wall, or a hidden killing zone, added another layer of protection, wearing down an attacker's resources, morale, and numbers. This approach, where multiple, distinct lines of defense are employed to protect a central asset, is a concept still highly relevant in modern security strategies, from cybersecurity networks to physical infrastructure protection. It's about creating redundancy and resilience, ensuring that if one layer is breached, others are ready to absorb the impact and continue the fight. The medieval engineers intuitively understood that no single defense is foolproof, but a series of interconnected, mutually reinforcing defenses creates an almost unassailable barrier. Furthermore, these gatehouses brilliantly showcase the power of psychological warfare. By creating illusions of vulnerability or strength, by funneling attackers into pre-planned kill zones, or by simply presenting an overwhelmingly formidable appearance, the medieval defenders played directly on the minds of their adversaries. Morale was a critical factor in siege warfare, and anything that could sap an attacker's will or create confusion was a powerful weapon. These structures were designed not just to physically repel, but to demoralize, to inspire dread, and to ultimately convince an enemy that the effort required to breach the defenses outweighed any potential reward. This manipulation of perception, the deliberate creation of a formidable psychological barrier even before the first arrow was loosed, continues to be a cornerstone of modern strategic planning. The architectural ingenuity found in these disguised gatehouses also offers enduring lessons. They demonstrate a deep understanding of physics, material science, and spatial awareness, often predating formal academic disciplines. The way engineers optimized angles for missile trajectories, managed complex water defenses, or even designed structures to appear one way but function entirely differently, speaks to a remarkable level of practical knowledge and innovative problem-solving. This ability to adapt technology and design to specific environmental and strategic needs, to think outside the conventional box, is an evergreen lesson for any field centered on engineering and problem-solving. These gatehouses remind us that sometimes the most effective solutions are those that defy conventional expectations, that challenge assumptions, and that leverage deception as a formidable tool. As we wrap up our incredible journey through these 25 disguised gatehouses, from the imposing strength of Dover Castle to the subtle deceptions of Bodiam, it becomes clear these weren't merely structures of stone and timber. They were brilliant statements of strategic mastery, physical manifestations of cunning, and undeniable testaments to the unwavering resolve of medieval defenders. Each one we examined, from the intricate trap of Krak des Chevaliers to the unyielding barrier of Conway's Barbican, served as a powerful reminder that medieval warfare was far more sophisticated than often portrayed. It was a complex dance of power, psychology, and engineering, where every stone laid, every angle chosen, and every apparent weakness was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. These gatehouses, designed never to yield, never to open to an enemy, stand as enduring monuments to that ingenuity, constantly challenging our preconceptions about what protection truly means. These silent sentinels, standing guard for centuries, offer us a profound peek into the minds of medieval engineers and strategists. They show us that deception wasn't just a dirty trick, it was a highly valued tactical tool, woven into the very fabric of defensive architecture. The ability to control the narrative, to create illusions that manipulated an enemy's expectations and morale, was as vital as the thickness of a wall or the strength of a portcullis. Think about the apparent vulnerability of a design like the broken gatehouse, deliberately crafted to lure attackers into a pre-arranged ambush, or the overwhelming grandeur of a structure like the citadel of Carcassonne's gate, designed to simply intimidate any thought of assault. This mental game, played out in stone and steel, illustrates a timeless truth. Victory often belongs to those who understand not just the mechanics of combat, but the psychology of their adversaries. What we've learned from these examples goes far beyond medieval castles. It's about recognizing the hidden layers of thought and purpose that lie beneath the surface of seemingly simple objects or strategies. It's about appreciating that true depth often comes from understanding the why behind the what. These gatehouses, initially appearing as straightforward entry points, reveal themselves to be intricate puzzles, each piece designed with deliberate intent to serve a higher strategic goal. They challenge us to look closer, to question assumptions, and to find the genius in the details that might otherwise go unnoticed. This journey reminds us that history is not just a collection of dates and events, but a rich tapestry of human ingenuity, problem-solving, and adaptation, constantly offering insights that transcend time. So, as we conclude this exploration, I encourage you to carry this perspective forward. The next time you see a historical structure, or even something in your modern world that seems ordinary, take a moment to consider its hidden purpose, its unspoken story, and the layers of thought that might have gone into its creation. What seemingly simple thing around you might actually be a masterclass in deception, designed to never truly open, or to serve a purpose far grander than its immediate appearance suggests. If this deep dive into medieval cunning captivated your imagination, imagine the other historical secrets waiting to be uncovered. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more historical insights and leave a comment below telling us which of these 25 disguised gatehouses you found the most surprising or ingenious. Your thoughts help us uncover even more of history's thrilling mysteries together.